Good morning. Welcome to the LeNora Faye Show, morning edition. I'm your host, LeNora Faye, and for some reason, I'm thinking about Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I actually met the guy, James Marsters. Oh my gosh, this was 2016 Comic Expo here in my city. And I was a complete nerd, complete nerd. My brother and I had gotten weekend passes. And I am not a comic person. I watch the Marvel movies, but I've never read a Marvel comic. I've read Archie comics as a child, and so well, I'm going to tell a story. Actually, you know what? This is a podcast episode. Forget it. I'm going to save this for the podcast. I'm going to go into detail on the podcast because I got to write that down. Actually, that would be the Halloween episode. Okay, so this is why I'm doing the show just to spitball in real time here. Uh, okay. But anyway, it was a great experience. I as you guys have heard before, I do um pay attention to celebrity news, but I don't necessarily want to meet celebrities. When I go to Comic Expo or when I've gone to Comic Expo in the past, it's not because I'm into comics, but like and I'm not even really into science fiction, but I am into seeing famous people. So I love going to the panels because I find them really insightful. My favorite panel, I think, ever was the Goonies, the cast of the Goonies. Like there was three of the main characters, including Corey Feldman. And I only watched that movie when I was in my 30s. I never saw the Goonies growing up. So I was in my 30s when I saw that movie, but I've come to really love it. Anyway, okay, I never thought about telling that story on a podcast, but anyway, I did meet James Marsters. In case the podcast episode doesn't come out or you don't go and listen to it, I did meet James Marsters, Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I was dressed as Bernadette Peters or Bernadette I don't know if that's her last name. No, that's an actress. Bernadette Peters is the actress. I was dressed as Bernadette from The Big Bang Theory. So I had the glasses, I had the wig, I had the dress, and he said I look great. And I got his autograph, and I was so nervous. I'm gonna turn that up. I'm gonna talk about that on the podcast. Okay, I gotta write that down. Let's write Spike. Okay. That's why that came to me. I was not thinking about him until I hit record. And suddenly I'm like, why do I want to talk about that? But that's for the okay. Ideas come to you in like the weirdest times. Seriously, it's when you're not trying to. Here's the thing. Maybe that's what I'll talk about here. When you need an idea or when you need a solution or something, it never appears when you're like, oh my gosh, what is it? What is it? What is it? And then you let it go and then boom. No, I wasn't even thinking I needed an episode for the podcast. I have a list. But I want to tell that one and I want to tell maybe I'll do that for next week. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the idea. I'll credit you guys. Um, now actually I was wanting to watch Buffy, the TV show. I love that show. I love that show. I got to watch it occasionally at a friend's house because again I didn't grow up with a TV, and it wasn't until I went to college, I left home, went to college, and had a TV for the first time and got to see, I think it was season 6. But now you can watch it. I think it's on Disney here. It keeps bouncing between Amazon, Disney, Netflix, whatever, at least in Canada. But oh, I still love that show. I'm not a recreating my childhood kind of person. I'm not someone that likes to revisit my childhood too much. But and technically that's like teenhood and early adulthood. That's like college years, Buffy. I think, but at the same time, I mean, I love listening to the Backstreet Boys still because I grew up in the Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears era. So that is it's so retro, but I love it. It doesn't necessarily take me back to that time because I'd prefer not to go back to that time, but there is a certain innocence about the 90s that yeah, I wouldn't want to go back and relive it. I don't want to recreate or relive that. But I like bringing elements from that time period into current life. And I think Buffy will always stay with me. You know, okay. Going back to childhood, age 12, 1995, the movie Clueless, which I've always listed as my favorite movie, which can be problematic to say that out loud. And I watched it recently. Now, again, watching it as a 40-year-old, I mean, it brings back all of the things for me. So I have to watch it. It hits a little differently now, but I still love it. But I think that's as far back as I'm willing to like revisit as far as going back to watch the stuff I liked. And that was a movie that I would sneak to my friend's house and she would rent it for me so I could watch that movie. And that affected me and impacted me so much. And the funny thing about that movie is I did tell my boy crush that that was my favorite movie. And then he judged me harshly on that. He never judged me about anything except for that movie. But then I didn't like his choice of favorite actor, so it worked out. He's still my boy crush, but anyway, he's probably still judging me for liking that movie. But that movie totally changed my perception of life. Living up in northern Alberta and not having a television and seeing California and Beverly Hills and wherever else that place. And then I actually, because that's a Paramount movie, and I actually got to go a couple of years ago. I went to uh I actually ended up going to the Paramount Studio movie lot, which was so fun. You can go listen to that I talk about it in the Pasadena episode of my podcast. So if you want to hear that story, that's on the podcast. I think that's what my life is going to become. Not, well, I'm not saying the movie studio, although hey, but I'll be like, you want to hear more about that? Go listen to this podcast episode. I think in my real life, that's what it's going to be like. Go listen to that podcast episode. I've been mentioning certain things about my mother just in passing in this show. And something funny that happened with my dad after a really serious incident health-wise that happened with my dad last month. My dad and his wife had pre-planned a trip to Vegas, and it was something that they were doing with her sister and husband. And I've never associated my dad with Vegas as far as like him wanting to go. And I don't think he's ever aspired to go to Vegas. So, oh my gosh, a couple months ago, I get a text from my dad and he's asking me, he's like, "You went to Vegas, right?" And I said, "Yes." Which I had. I took myself to Vegas for a week for my 35th birthday. I went by myself, which was an adventure. And I've not talked about that on the podcast yet because the podcast is still new and there's like 1,000 stories for me to share. So maybe that will be one time. But anyway, my dad wanted to know what I liked about Vegas. And I said to my dad, look, the rule of Vegas is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And when you're under the age of 40, you definitely do not say what you did because it's a fun city and I did fun things. And I'm not going to tell my dad what my favorite parts of Vegas were. And later when I saw him in person, I was laughing. I had to tell his wife that. I said, I just thought it was a funny thing for my dad to say. But my dads can be really innocent sometimes, and I think my dad, like he wasn't thinking about that at all. So I told him, I'm like, I can't tell you what I liked in Vegas, or even all the things I did in Vegas, but here's some things I could tell you. So anyway, he survived his Vegas trip. It was obviously not as wild as mine. And but it was interesting because so this was past week or so that he went, and so I was getting photos from my dad of, just the Grand Canyon and some of the places they got to see great concerts and just walking around Vegas, and he was sending me photos that things I had seen, and it was kind of a, I don't know. It's one of those things like when your parents, like my dad's retired, mom has passed away 20 years ago, and dad is remarried, and they have a very fun life. And it's it's interesting, regardless of what your thoughts towards your parents are, or relationship wise, it's just interesting when you see your parents living and they share things with you, and then you're an adult at this point, right? And I never really envisioned, again, mostly doing to do with how we grew up or how we were raised. I never really thought that I would see photos of my dad from in Vegas, sending them from Vegas, not really doing Vegasy things. I think Vegas on a senior level, which totally sounds ageist, but nothing wild happened. And if it did, I definitely never want to know about it. Um, but yeah, it just made me think about my time in Vegas, which, there is that rule. But I have a podcast and a memoir to write, so hey, But you know what? Honestly, I've had wilder times in San Francisco than I have in Vegas. I played it pretty tame compared to now or my comfort level. Played it pretty safe in Vegas. That being said, I don't think I would go crazy in Vegas now. I don't need to. I've had those experiences. Oh my goodness. But now I'm thinking of a future Vegas episode. What can I even say about that? I don't know. It's not that's the fun thing. I mean, here so this is not a dilemma, but this is something I'm working through in real time and talking about it here. My creative process is that um there's you know that phrase or that saying, like, if you don't take a picture, did it really happen? And you don't post it on social media, did it really happen? There's this thing about taking life experiences. If you don't share it with anybody, did it really happen? Now, I look at it like, singer-songwriters, they create music around their life experiences, right? They turn it into music. People write books. For me, I look at podcasting as an art form. I am sharing experiences that I've had. I'm not interested in interviewing people. I've kind of done that before. At this point in time, I'm using my personal life experiences to entertain people, and I share the stories I'm comfortable sharing. And the point is to share, to kind of examine and explore just living as a human being. And certain things will resonate with people and certain stories won't resonate with people. And that who and how it resonates is beyond my control, but what I can do is share. And that to me is a form of art, because I don't draw. I used to be a musician, but I don't express myself the way I get to through music, the way I get to express myself speaking, which is even why doing this morning show experiment is just a way for me to, like, practice, build that muscle, and grow a skill and grow an audience that I've been growing in for various different things over the last 6 years or so. So there's this thing of, like, and sometimes things are sacred which you don't want to share. And this, now, if you're listening to this as someone who just consumes content, I mean, it's we artists need an audience, right? We don't like to play for nobody. Not really. Not if we're being honest about it. Now, if you're a content creator and are wondering what to share, I mean, you share what you feel comfortable with. And at the same time, there are certain things, I'm not saying that, like, don't share everything, but there are certain things that are sacred, that may take time to figure out how to share, because and that's the thing. And this is what I'm working through right now, is that there are certain experiences that I've had, and they're not um horrific by any means. Um but there's a bit of I feel a bit of sensitivity, like, how do I share this experience? Because it was something that, whether it was like a wonderful experience or a major life challenge or a crisis, there's something about sharing it in a way that you really get to share it, and from a deep place and from an impactful place. Because once it's out, it's out. And I'm not sure that I completely buy into, like, it's no longer yours, but it's just being aware of what kind of energy, because there are stories that I've wanted to share for a long time, but I felt that if I just share it from a surfacey place, or just it wouldn't quite land, or I would feel, I don't want to say I would feel cheap, but I would feel like I kind of cheated myself from creating a deeper discussion around it. So there are a lot of things over the years that, you know, through podcasting and through other projects that I've done, that I haven't shared a lot of experiences. And I think I needed to, learn how to do that and feel comfortable, so that when I do share some of these things, I'm not talking about the Vegas trip, but other experiences that I've had, other stories that I want to share as a form of entertainment, but I wanted to do it in a way that brings a little more depth and meaning to it, because it will be of use, of value, of help for someone who's going through something similar, or just frickin' inspiration. I do believe in that, and that's mostly because of where I'm at in my life. Um, it's easy to share stories for attention, and look, I love attention. As an artist, I love attention for the right for not for the right reasons, for reasons that mean something to me. It's all about meaning. So it's really interesting navigating this where I'm going, okay, so I'm creating a show. I've created a podcast around my experiences right now because that's what I feel compelled to share. And later, if that branches out to other people's experiences, maybe. But again, I'm not interested in doing like interviews per se. Conversations, yes. Interviews, meh. Um, and I'm right now, I'm actually, if you see me looking over there, it's because I have a list of all the chapters from my memoir that I've been writing and living for years. And even that is not something I want to put out yet because I want to do the podcast first. Be different stories, but it's just learning how to feel comfortable expressing the stories from a deeper place, from a deeper understanding of even not necessarily why that happened, but what I learned because they happened. And I am entering this place so hard right now. It's like, oh, it's exhausting because I don't want to like I don't want to be shallow, but sometimes it's just easier being that way. But you know, it doesn't resonate much anymore. Anyway. So yeah, my dad went to Vegas. He survived. And I did not tell him all the things I did in Vegas, nor will I. But I just thought it was funny because, you know, he didn't know that you don't really ask people about Vegas too much under a certain age, although I know people of all ages party hard. So oh, now I'm recall. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that. So, what have we learned? I now have a new episode idea for the LeNora Faye Show about meeting Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that was wonderful. I was not expecting that. And yeah, I like things deep. What can I say? Uh, oh boy. Okay. So, this has been the first week experiment of doing a morning show. I'm gonna do another. I think so. This is episode 5. If there's an episode 6, it'll happen tomorrow, or there'll be a day off, and we'll do the following, which will happen to be our Canadian Thanksgiving. So yeah, we'll see what happens. You just never know. I Here's the thing. I'm a person that if I need something and I realize the only way I can get it is by creating it, then so be it. Which I'm leaning into that so really with every aspect of life. I mean, they talk about like creating the life you want, manifesting all that stuff, which is basically what this is. Because I was thinking I need platforms. So my first instinct is to just make your own and then grow it, which is a lot of work. But sometimes that's what you got to do. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that one. I'm still looking at my list of things I want to talk about. There's so many things I want to talk about. And it's nice just to be able to do that. So okay, I'm gonna wrap this up by talking about this wig. So this one I bought in Toronto. I've got this in like a honey yellow, and this is a pale pink if you're not watching the show. Um, it's been nice to put on wigs again. So uh this one, I was moderating an event in Toronto. First time and only time I've been to Toronto. Oh my goodness, there's a story. I was moderating the post-film panel for a documentary, and I had never done an in-person panel moderating gig before. So I was really excited. And then as I was getting ready in my hotel room, I realized how nervous I was. Had my outfit, had the wig, had spent all day preparing material, like looking at the questions and everything for the panelists, and we had had a kind of a run through the day before, and just really enjoying my time there. And I remember it was at a theater at the University of Toronto, and I remember getting there. It's all great. I was just like really in the moment. And then I was in the back row of the movie theater, and the screening was happening. And I had seen the film a couple of times, but this was the first time in a theater setting. And I really take what I do seriously in the sense that I want to bring the best energy possible. So doing something like this particular show where it's just completely off the cuff and I have to pause for a second, collect myself. I'm going, all right, I don't know how this is going to land. It's fine. This is just for me to, again, build a muscle. But anyway, I was really, really in my head a few years ago about doing stuff like this. And so this was my first in-person event, and I could not sit down. Luckily, back row, no one was behind me. Um, the director and her sister, they were sitting beside me. So I stood up, I had my cue cards, and I couldn't pace, but I was um able to stand behind the seats by like an exit door, like that was blocked off. So I had a little bit of room to move because I was realizing like, oh, I am really nervous. Like not shaking nervous, but I had to really focus. And I was like, ooh, this is not a normal experience for me. So because here's the thing, I wanted to bring my best and I knew it would be fine, but I never like it's such a thing like when I equate it to when I used to be a performer for me like a when I used to be a violinist and I was performing leading up to it I had no comprehension as to what was going to happen and that made me uneasy, so I had to learn to be like just stay now, stay present, stay present, stay present, do it right. So leading up to it I would just be like so I had this feeling come up and I was going, oh wow, I wasn't prepared for this. I intellectually I knew it would be fine, but I was not prepared for like the whole thing of emotions. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm like, okay, that's not usually you. So chill out. I wasn't chilled out at all. And so I stood. I watched the film. I was standing in this wig in a really nice long dress from Anthropology. And I'm like, you got this. But I was like, oh, I need to, like, you gotta get this out. So I did not know how to, I would be better now because I've had a lot more experience and uh, fairly more relaxed now. But at the time, I was really, really, really having to tell myself, just stay present, it'll be fine. And sure enough, and credits came up. I said, okay, let's go down while the lights are up, like that before the lights come up, so that people see us on stage and they know to stay, even though they were told to, but people forget. So we all go we go down the stairs, down the theater stairs to the stage. The credits end and the lights come up and we're all sitting there. And all the things just flow out. Great, because I'm in my element at that point, right? But leading up to it, so not. So not. So it's just interesting to even reflect on. I mean, I brought that up because I'm like I'm wearing this wig and I haven't. It's a heavy wig actually, so it's not one I wear on screen a whole lot. Although I would do virtual conventions and for like an afternoon I would wear this and be sweating profusely on camera, which you couldn't see. But that reminded me of that experience where I was going, wow, yeah, I was pretty. I had a lot going on. I think maybe, like that scene from Mean Girls when she's like, that's why her hair is so big, it's full of secrets. I swear that this week got really, really poofy because my nervousness, anxiety, my thoughts, it was like making the hair just go. It was just so much energy. Anyway, it was a great experience. Absolutely loved it. And all those little things just chalk it up to making stuff like this easier. Which again, I say this at the time, like I'm recording this and then it'll be posted, and I'll have no idea where it will go. And I'm totally okay with that, right? I know where I want it to go, but it's just this thing of consistently showing up and trying it, or it's practice. It really is practice. And I say that as an encouragement, like, just keep at it. Again, end what you need to end. Um, but take from whatever experience that you need to move forward. And that's basically what this show is. So, on that note, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. There'll be ways, I'll put in the notes below the caption, ways you can support the show. Of course, the LeNora Faye Show podcast is available on Spotify and Apple and here on YouTube. If you're listening to this elsewhere, then obviously I have uploaded it to podcast platform. And we will continue on for week number 2. And then after that, again, this is an experiment. It's a test. See what happens, plant the seeds, see where it goes. So we will chat we'll chat in the next show.